Greetings and welcome to a quick introduction on using returns with functions. So last little preview, we did parameters. In this one, we're going to go ahead and do returns. So the function in this case works exactly the same. We create our function and you rename it to, we'll just call it returns. And then the key is wanting to get the data back from this. Now, I'm not going to necessarily give you a super great example of when you'd want to use it. The point is how this works. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do some math in here. I'm going to just create a variable x and say it equals 5 plus 10. All right. And then here is how this is what you need to do in the function to return a value. So you go to functions, and you'll notice that there's this return feature. You pull that up at the end, because as soon as you do return, it doesn't matter what you do after it, the function's done. So we're going to return x. Again, this is not a great example of a useful feature of it, but this is how it works. So when we call the function now, and remember it's called returns, when we call the function now, it's going to return x. And essentially, this statement right here, this statement becomes whatever x is. So in this case, 15. Now, when we run this, it doesn't do anything, right? It doesn't do anything. It runs it. It returns x, and this is 15, but you can't see anything. So what I'm going to do for now is actually go ahead and set it to a variable, because normally a lot of the times what you do is you set something like this. So let's do var new x, and then you just drag this into it. And now when you actually call the function, you're calling returns, it does 5 plus 10 equals x. It returns x, which is 15, and returns becomes 15. So at that point, what we have is this, right? So line 6 looks like line 7. It is 15. And then we can prove this by going to console log. We're going to console log new x, run this, and then it's 15. So it returns it. That is how returns works. Again, not necessarily a great example of when you would use it, but that is how it works. You create your standard function, and then when you're done with the function, you return whatever you want to be. So, I mean, it could be evaluating if this is this, return true, else return false. And then you can do var is pressed equals, and if it returns true or false, and you can do if is pressed and do some other work. So those are examples, but this is how it works. You just return whatever value you want to return, and that place becomes it. That is a key thing. I see a lot of students they'll just do the return, and it doesn't really do anything. It runs the function, but you don't actually get the return. You have to actually then take it and put it somewhere. Now you could, in theory, put it in something else, and my thing's freaking out on me. But that's the gist of returns. Now, to kind of finalize this, you can do parameters. I could send input 1, and then have this 5 input 1, and get the same. The big thing is, well, actually, this would just be. We could still do. I'll call this one input for differences, and then we'll call this one input, because again, it's not actually, and this is important to understand, it's not actually input 1. Input 1 is not coming down here. What input 1 goes right here. So we take input 1, we send it here. Input 1 becomes input, and then it's used in this. So when we run this again, we're going to get the same result of 15. And of course, we can change this, reset it, run it again, and then 15, we create this, we define it, we're sending 15 to it, it returns 15 plus that, and now we console log out here. So that is the gist of it. You can have a function by itself, you can have a function with a return, you can have a function with parameters, you can have a function with returns and parameters. Last thought, you can have as many parameters as you want, but you only have one return. Right? You can only have, because as soon as it hits the return, it's done. Is the bottom line. So I can do if this happens, return true, else return false, because then undoubtedly it's either going to return true or false. But the very first time it hits a return, it's done. It will not execute any code after that. So with that, have a great day. We'll see you next lesson.